Hello, this is Cliff Godwin. I manage eBusiness Suite development at Oracle, and today I'd like to give you an update on our eBusiness Suite strategy. So first, we're going to talk about our overall strategy, what releases we have and support timelines and so forth. And then we'll talk about some more of the investments that we've been making recently on your behalf in eBusiness Suite. So let's start with the overall strategy. When we work on eBusiness Suite, we really think of three different areas that we're focused on. One is to improve the user experience. The second is to add new features and functions. And the third is to make the system more highly available and more cost effective for you to operate. So we'll cover each of those in detail. So in terms of the releases we've been doing, our latest release is the 12.2.10 release. Came out in September of 2020. You can see this is part of an annual pattern of updates that we've been doing that we expect to continue to the 12.2 code line, which originally came out in 2013. Now, in addition to that annual set of updates, those annual release updates that we give that carry bug fixes as well as new features and functions, we've been adding alongside that a release of what we call our Enterprise Command Center technology, which I'll be showing you quite a bit of today. And that came out for the first time in October of 2018. And we've done 5 updates so far to that. So up through September 20 of 2020, we've released an update to that about every 6 months. And we can expect to continue that pattern too. That functionality is additive. It doesn't disrupt anything that you're doing currently on one of the 12.2x releases. So we can update that more frequently, and there's really no disruption, particularly in applying those latest updates. So in terms of the support timeline for the 12.2 release itself, we originally announced back in 2018, we announced what we call our continuous innovation strategy, that the eBusiness Suite and the 12.2 release itself would be supported through at least 2030. We've updated that to say now at least through 2031. And the idea here is not that 2031 is an actual hard date when we would really de-support eBusiness Suite. It's that we're trying to maintain at least a 10-year commitment of Premier support on not just eBusiness Suite, but PeopleSoft and JD Edwards, the other Applications Unlimited product lines, so that if we were ever to make a decision to stop Premier support on an Applications Unlimited product like eBusiness Suite, you'd know you'd have at least 10 years of notice. So basically each year we'll update that support timeline to reflect making sure we have at least 10 years of notice. So far the formal commitment is through 2031. But that's not a date you should look at as a drop dead date for eBusiness Suite. It's just the length of the commitment we've made at this point in time, and you should look for updates to that as we go through the 2021 year. So that's the 12.2 release. It's the release where we are going to continue to provide functional updates. We're going to provide technical updates. I'll talk more about that later. But we won't do a 12.3 release. We're not going to do a 13 of eBusiness Suite. We're going to continue to update 12.2 indefinitely on this annual basis, and commit to at least 10 years of Premier support and keep that commitment up to date. Now that's the 12.2 release. The 12.1 release of eBusiness Suite has been out since 2009, and that is ending its Premier support life at the end of 2021. At the time we end that Premier support, that will be the longest Premier support release we've ever had in eBusiness Suite. The 12.1.3 release that essentially everybody is running came out in August of 2010. So by the end of 2011, even that particular patch level, that particular update level will have been supported for over 11 years. So it definitely is time to move along beyond the 12.1.3 release. For those customers who are going to have a problem with that timeline, we are offering essentially some extra runway just to say, well, we have an offering for what we call market-driven support in 2022 and 2023 for customers who aren't going to be able to complete a move off of the 12.1.3 release, either up to the 12.2 of eBusiness Suite or over to the SaaS product lines. re-implementing onto SaaS in that time frame. So give you some extra time to get that done. That does have a fee associated with it. In fact, it's an ACS support contract that you enter into. And the idea here is that we've scoped the support that we provide in this 2022 and 2023 period for the 12.1.3 release to the things that you need to run in stable operation. We'll fix Severity 1 and Severity 2 bugs. We'll continue to provide legislative and security updates. There are some minimum code levels that you need to get to for that offering. Basically we're not intending to support the original version that we released back in 2010. We have made some key updates to that along the way, and we expect you to have those. And not all products are included in that. There are some products that have essentially been desupported or weren't carried forward into 12.2, which it's basically time to move off of if you want to progress on into 2022 and 2023 with the 12.1.3 release. The pricing of this offering is a tiered price structure based on how much you pay for eBusiness Suite support. So customers who are paying, have a large worldwide deployment and thousands of users are going to pay a bit more for this offering than somebody who's basically, got a small single instance and is a much smaller business. So basically something that's in proportion to the amount of support activity that you generate. So that they try to be accommodating so that we don't have a price point that is unapproachable for some set of the customers who might need it. So we can encourage you to contact your ACS support sales representative if you're interested in learning about the contract in more detail for the 2022 and 2023 support period for 12.1.3. Now, eBusiness Suite is supported or is certified ever since September of 2019 with the 19C database. So both the 12.1.3 and the 12.2 releases are supported with 19C, and you do need to make a plan if you're not on the 19C database to get to that. The earlier database versions, the 12.102 and the 11.204 database versions that you might be running are already in extended support. The 11.204 is already in market-driven support. It's basically already essentially end of life and has like a lifeline support offering that's available for that. So basically, part of your planning for the next year, as well as if you're on 12.1.3, figuring out how to move up to either 12.2 or to re-implement onto SaaS, or to, and along with that, figure out what your plan needs to be to get into the 19C database. So with those support considerations in mind, let's talk more about the detail of what we've really done for you in eBusiness Suite. So as I mentioned, we really bucket the activities that we do on your behalf into the user experience category, the functional innovation category, and the operational efficiency category, and I'll cover each of those in turn. So let's start with discussing the user experience. So here within user experience, we really have three ideas. One is that we have delivered this enterprise command center framework, and on top of that, we've built many command centers. These are BI dashboards that you use, if you will, to begin the navigation experience within the eBusiness Suite product set. So really essentially new home pages for the applications that are information driven. So I'll discuss that in a lot more detail. In addition to that, we have moved a lot of our interfaces from forms over to HTML. We still have the HTML, but still have the forms, but we've provided updated look and feel, more modern user interactions that work with tablets, and a lot more HTML UIs that you can elect to use. And we have mobile apps also that work with 12.1.2 and 12.1.3 and the 12.2 release. So let's cover each of those in turn. We'll start with the command centers. So the idea of the command centers is a concept we call information-driven navigation. So the idea is that you would begin your session as a regular user of eBusiness Suite with an information-rich dashboard that has key indicators and charts and graphs and a lot of selection and filtering criteria right here on the page, and also shows you a result set. So rather than starting with a blank screen where you have to enter a transaction and query it up, and knowing what transaction enter meant consulting a report, you instead start with a view of data, and you can drill directly from this data into the transactions that you need to work on. So where have we done this now? We've done it essentially in front of effectively all the applications. So really whatever area of your business suite you're using, you can begin your day with a command center. Now, the command centers are easy to deploy. They're specific to 12.2. This is not 12.1.3. You need to get, this is one of the values of getting to the 12.2 release. If you're 12.2.4 and higher, you can use the Enterprise Command Center dashboards. There's no additional cost for this. This is not a product that you need to buy. It's really just a better user interface for your business suite. And once you're in the right release level, you can just deploy this. It's a fairly straightforward to enable it and set it up. And then it automatically integrates with the business suite user interface. So you can navigate back and forth between these dashboards and transaction screens. And you can, it automatically honors the security profiles. So the security rules that you set up about what data should be visible to each user, those rules are automatically honored within the ECC framework, within the data that's displayed. It, of course, supports all the languages that we support, and most importantly, it's extensible. So we understand that you'll have your own data attributes, your own metrics that you want to show in these dashboards. You can include those in the collection program that fetches data from the business suite transactions into this in-memory model that's behind this user interface. And you can add your attributes to that and have them participate either as in the calculation of key indicators that are displayed or as filter criteria that a user can search by. So you could easily extend this, as well as customizing the user interface, of course, to change the chart types and all the things you'd expect in that type of change. So let's show you, to make this more concrete, let's walk through a few little demonstrations, just kind of little walkthroughs of some different business scenarios, just to show you how this technology and how this approach really supports solving some business problems very efficiently. Basically, this is not just to, it's not just that it's a more appealing user interface. It actually lets the user get to the work they need to do, make better judgments about what they need to work on and what decisions they need to make. So we'll show you how that all works. So let's start with a case that kind of everybody can relate to, which is a receivables case. We have a receivables command center. And let's suppose that you're a receivables person, a professional, and you want to figure out what customer you ought to call to ask about paying an overdue invoice. So you start your day with key indicators about the overall position you have in receivables, different metrics about that. And you also have information you would typically find on an invoice aging report, which is essentially how much is overdue by organization by aging bucket. So we have some 90 days overdue, some 60 days overdue, and so forth. You also have a list of customers who make up those balances. So you essentially know which customers are responsible for the largest overdue balances. So what we want to do is, you notice that this customer at the top on the right side graph, Hillman Associates, is the customer name that has the largest overdue balance. So maybe you'd think we ought to call them and try to get to collections, but actually maybe they're only a little bit overdue. What your role might be as a receivables person, your strategy might be, is to say, I want to call the people that are very late in paying. I'm going to concentrate my effort on the over 90 days late payments. So we're going to click on the over 90 days part of that chart, and we're going to select that particular operating unit, the Vision Operations operating unit, and the over 90 days aging bucket. And see, the whole interface recalculates for that data scope, for just that organization and just that aging bucket. Now we have a view of that aging bucket that we really care about calling on. And what's interesting is there's a different customer. If you look at the right side graph now, the top customer is a thing called AC Networks, which is different than the one that made up the overall biggest balance. So that's really the customer we ought to call. So let's click on that bar chart. And now we're in the context specifically of the over 90 days aging bucket, specifically for that one customer. And now what we see down on the set of individual rows at the bottom of the screen is all of the transactions that make up that number, that make up that balance. And they're sorted, of course, by the largest amount due down to the smallest. So the largest invoice is on top. So if we click the little preview link, we go directly to the invoice that makes up the largest part of that balance. And we can now call the customer and ask about whether we can get that invoice paid. So the power of the model here is that you didn't need an aging report. You didn't need custom reporting to figure out what to work on. The interface lets you get to the important thing to work on based on your own business process, and then get directly from that sort of BI type of data and about aggregates directly down to an individual transaction that you can act on, an individual set of detail that you can take action on, all with 3 clicks. So you started not even knowing what number to call, and now 3 clicks later, we're looking at the invoice that you should discuss with the customer that makes up the biggest part of your over 90 days balance. So it just shows you the power of the model. So let's look at some other scenarios to show you how this solves business problems in some other areas. So we have a payables command center that's designed to help you optimize how you receive cash flows and get discounts that you're eligible for, and don't make accidental late payments because invoices are on hold. There's all sorts of administrative things that about the payables function that this helps you with. But one of the things that we want to highlight here is what it does to help you close your accounting periods. So we have a period close dashboard here and within the payables command center. And so let's suppose that your role is to review draft accounting that's been created. Essentially, it's the accounting entries that you want to confirm or correct so that they become part of your final period close accounting. So we have some draft accounting entries. So let's click on those. Now we have several different event types within these accounting entries. So let's click on the credit memo validated type of accounting entry. And within that, we can see a list of these accounting entries. Now, one of the new capabilities we added fairly recently in the command center is the ability to, if you see where we're clicking over there, is to see the row set to take up the whole screen so that you can actually see the details of that information. So here with this approach, we actually have the whole list of transactions that we can scan. And you look down that list of account descriptions, and in general, if you're doing a credit memo, you'd expect the to be crediting either the or actually debiting the account payable to the supplier or to inventory, basically taking the reducing the debt that you owe the supplier. But there's one account there that doesn't look right, which is payable to bank. That wouldn't normally be something that you'd see on a credit memo. So you say, okay, well, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. So let's click on that. And we find that there's one of these payable to bank transactions within this credit memo validated account type. But now let's zoom back out and say, now that I've found this interesting thing I'm looking for, let's actually relax that search criterion. Let's get rid of the filter on credit memo validated. If you see where the finger is pointing, I'm going to eliminate that filter and essentially zoom back out. So this just shows you the power of the sort of the zoom in, zoom out feature of the command center. And now I can look across, go back to all those different event types, and I'm trying to find where payable to bank is the account we're using. But it actually, no matter what accounting event it occurred in, we're trying to figure out how often this problem occurred with this bad account. So we see we've got 4 of these entries that have this. So now what I want to do is export that to Excel. So I create an Excel file. I click export and it creates for me an Excel file. And the reason we want to do that is we'll maybe give that to the accounting supervisor who can go out and start some root cause analysis to understand why this payable to bank account is showing up in our draft accounting. Maybe that's from an interface program that's got some reason why an error where it populates that accounting entry automatically. Maybe that's a user training issue where we have a problem with the user training and somebody's making a mistake in putting that in. So let's export that and we can give that to the manager. And the other thing we could do is we can save this query. I mean, having found our way to this problem, we can save this query, and later on we can come back after some time has gone by and some correction has started to occur. People have gone and found out how to correct these entries. You can go back and re-execute that query And you find that yes, four of these four entries now, two of those have been corrected. We only have two of them left. So saving searches, being able to export to Excel, being able to expand the rows and look at everything just shows you some nice capabilities of this user interface, as well as how it helps you solve the business problem of finding various things that could be wrong in a process like the period close. So let's switch gears and look at another case, the iProcurement case, where we now use this technology, not really for sort of filtering and worrying about transactions to work on, but actually for shopping. So iProcurement is the uh, product with any business suite that you use to for employees to shop and create requisitions, either direct or indirect procurement use cases. And the idea behind this is that with an attractive shopping experience, the requisitioner will find what they need to, progress at their, solve their whatever it is for either their own use or for the company that they need to buy, and do a better job of shopping, get the right thing, make cost-effective decisions. And meanwhile, also the procurement department also wants to try to use this to drive on-contract spend. So in other words, you want features that will help the requisitioner find their way to things that are in your catalogs where you have negotiated purchase agreements, and avoid what we call maverick spend, which is where the um, user orders a non-catalog item and that you don't have an agreement for, and you don't get favorable pricing under your purchase agreements. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So let's buy a computer monitor with this interface. So like with any modern internet shopping experience, you can start out by shopping by category. Say we could be buying services, we could be buying supplies, whatever it might be, or you could just simply type in what it is you're looking for. So let's look for monitors. So when we look for monitors, as soon as you type that in, you get some monitors. They have different sizes, different brands that show up. And if you're interested in one of those, you can actually look at more detail at that particular one, and then you see ratings and reviews by other people inside your organization. So of course, if it's a monitor, you could find consumer reviews on a lot of different websites. But if you're doing something that's kind of unique to the business you're in, where there wouldn't be consumer reviews, some kind of industrial product or ingredient or something that wouldn't have consumer reviews, you can see how well that purchase worked for other requisitioners similarly situated inside your organization. So at this point, we want to say, okay, based on looking at those reviews, we want to narrow down our monitor sizes, because certain monitors have seemed to work well for people in our company. So what we'll do here is select the 24 and 27-inch monitors. And now we get a list of monitors that meet that criteria. And within that, now we're going to pick a couple of them to compare. So we check a couple of them to compare, and we click on compare. And now we have a comparison window that shows us all the attributes that differ across those two monitors. So they have different screen resolutions. Maybe one of them, they have different sizes. Maybe one of them is has speakers and the other one doesn't. So you decide based on that which one is a good fit for your needs. And from here, if you want to buy the one on the left, you can just click on the shopping cart and go directly from here to the shopping cart, where you say, okay, this is where do you want this, and when do you need it delivered, and so forth. And then you click submit, and now you've made a requisite. Now you made a purchase. So it's really just like shopping as a consumer on internet shopping experience, except you're doing this within your company, buying things that you need for your business. Now, I mentioned about the non-catalog request. How do you drive catalog spend? Well, you can enter a non-catalog request in the iProcurement system. You say, well, I think I've got something unique I need to buy, so I'm just going to go in and type it in and buy it. I'm not going to shop for it in the catalog. So you start out by saying, I want to do a non-catalog request. And so you enter in a description. I want to buy I want to buy a microscope, let's say. Now, one of the things you can do is, having entered what it is you think you want, you can say, well, let's just check the catalog just in case in case we can find something in the catalog that matches this. So you can click on check catalog for similar items. And based on your descriptive information, even though you've started out on a path to buy something that you thought was going to be not in the catalog, you can actually divert to see that the catalog can actually match what you want. And then you can go back to putting that in the shopping cart, and you've gotten directed back into on catalog spend. So if the company has a standard to buy certain brands of equipment, buy certain brands of laptops or whatever it might be, and somebody starts out the process of buying something similar, this mechanism can divert them back to make an on-contract spending choice. A final demo I want to go through here is to talk about the inventory command center. And the inventory command center is very powerful. It does a lot of things, has a lot of functions that support outbound shipping, dealing with shipping exceptions, making freight carrier appointments, expediting receiving and inspections and putaways, and prioritizing cycle counts. There's all kinds of things this does. What I want to show you, just to give you a sense of a use case that applies very broadly, is let's suppose that we're simply deciding who we're going to ship a scarce product to. So let's suppose that we have some, this is our reservations dashboard. Let's suppose we have some orders, as well as some WIP jobs, some manufacturing jobs that needs a component that we have, or need a product that we have in inventory. But we're kind of short of that, and so we have to decide which orders we're going to allocate the scarce inventory to. So from this command center, you can actually select that you can view your picture of unreserved demand, which means the things that people want to buy that you haven't made an inventory allocation for. And you can see them by date. So here's the days when the demand occurs, and the demand that's unreserved, meaning that we haven't been able to match it up with inventory that we're going to use against the demand, is in the sort of bluish color there, the sort of teal color. And so let's look at that September 6th for the unreserved demand. That's the nearest term demand that we have, where we haven't allocated inventory to meet that demand. So as an inventory manager, that's the thing you want to work on. So having arrived at that particular data scope now, just the unreserved demand for that particular day, we can actually see that there's several different items involved. And some of those are items that are going to be needed in jobs that are going to manufacturing jobs, WIP jobs they're going to run. And some are needed to actually directly fulfill customer orders. So let's click on one of the purple ones, because those ones have sales order demands. We're focused first on satisfying customers. And so within that, we now say, okay, I've got this one item and I have several customers that want it. And now this is where your business judgment comes in. You're as the manager in this area, or the person working on this in this area, you might know that one of these customers is your best customer. One of these customers is another customer is one that you said you allocated some of this to last week, and so now it's somebody else's turn. You might know that one of these customers has a contract where you get penalties if you don't ship on time. All sorts of reasons why you might pick one customer versus another. So in this case, we know to select AC Networks, and so we'll go ahead and do that. And then here are the demand lines, the sales order lines from that particular customer for this particular item. So we can click on one of those and go ahead and create, just by clicking on the transaction screen here, it populates all the information. We just click and create a reservation for that particular sales order line. So now we're going to ship that product to that particular customer that we chose. Okay, so those are examples of what we've done with the technology we have so far. The next thing we're doing, so this is a roadmap item, is to include in this interface genealogy and tracing capability, which will allow you to visualize how products go from being purchased to included into inventory to participating in different work orders where they're made into higher level assemblies, ultimately into finished products, and those finished products are sold to customers. You have a whole end-to-end view of the genealogy of your products, going from materials that are purchased through the manufacturing process and out to sales. And the use cases we're going to support here initially, there are many, many use cases that we have in mind for this, but the first thing we're going to do is focus on essentially a recall type case. So you might start with a set of orders where the customer returned the product or reported a defect or made a service request or something else that tells you might have a quality problem. And then you might want to chain backward from those sales orders to see if they have a common ancestor, to see if there's did all of those products that got recalled have a common lot of materials that was purchased from a particular supplier. So this visualization through this genealogy diagrammer will help you find that. And then the other case, sort of a recall management use case, is like, for example, once I did figure out that I had a bad lot of parts from a particular supplier, then the question is, well, where else did those parts go? What other products were those assembled into? Because maybe I want to not sell those products if they haven't been sold yet, or maybe I want to recall them or proactively service them in some way if they've already been delivered in customer finished goods. So this ability to chain backwards to find a problem and forwards to capture the implications of a problem are the next use cases that you're going to see. And this will all be integrated with that enterprise command center technology. So that's something to look forward to. So we've talked quite a bit about the command centers. That's really kind of the most interesting thing going on with the eBusiness Suite user interface overall, and one of the most dynamic areas of innovation we have in eBusiness Suite for sure. Along with that, though, we've been working for a long time to deliver more HTML user interfaces that are an alternative to our Forms user interfaces. You don't have to switch from Forms to HTML. We still have the Forms, but people have asked for a more modern look and feel, one that resizes to take advantage, shows you more data if you're on a bigger screen, all those kinds of things that are modern that you expect in an HTML UI. And we have that now over much more of the Business Suite than we had at the 12.1 level. So we've made some enhancements around cosmetics, around the ability, for example, to add themes where you can add different color themes if you'd like to. We have built in our framework technology ability to recognize that you're on a touch-friendly device like a tablet, and if so, it'll alter the display to make it easier to touch individual rows, or do you do drag and drop movements to sort of resort columns in the table, for example, or to flip down and refresh the record set, things you'd expect on a tablet. And then, as I said, we've coded many more of these HTML UIs, really particularly in the supply chain area. So in that area, it's really the case that you can get through your day doing just about anything you do as a ongoing day-to-day activity using HTML UI. There are a number of setup UIs that we have that really use implementation time that we haven't moved over to HTML just because that most people are already implemented. It doesn't really add that much value to customers to change those UIs at this point. But we focused in the transaction screen areas where people really spend their day and where the value of having this larger amount of data to be displayed or where mobility is really an important consideration. So that's where we've invested. Now we have mobile applications as well, and the reason these apply, those other things, the command centers and the HTML UIs, those are all specific to the EBS 12.2 release. The mobile applications are available for 12.1 and 12.2, and here we have line of business applications and self-service applications. By line of business applications, I mean these are things that a user uses as one of their main interfaces, all day to do their job. So the things like the maintenance technician and the field service technician have very sophisticated mobile apps that give them an overview of the work they need to perform. They can drill down to the details of any individual task. They can figure out where to go based on maps. They can do debriefing type operations to record what they do, all within a mobile app that works on iOS or Android. In the mobile supply chain area, which is really for plants and warehouses, distribution type environments, where you're doing inventory operations, inventory counting, and so forth. The ability to scan a QR code and get a multi-part set of data that automatically populates the user interface is a new capability we added fairly recently in mobile supply chain apps. That applies to any 12.2 release. For the sort of self-service use cases where a broad set of people in the organization would use the mobile app, we have a mobile approvals app for the approvals that you do inside of eBusiness Suite. And for the human resources employee and manager use cases, the manager and employee self-service, most of that can now be done on an iPhone or Android smartphone with the HR self-services mobile app. So this has many, many functions in it that you can do that are essentially all the HR self-service functions you would want to do in eBusiness Suite. Now, one of the specific things that people do a lot with the mobile app is time card management. So we have a time card mobile app. And within one of the things we've added, just to give you an example of the kind of things we're adding, is we've added a rules engine for this. So now if an employee enters something like, I work 12 hours, the rules engine can actually modify the time card to say, okay, that was 8 hours of regular time and 4 hours of overtime. So it means that you don't really rely on the employee to get their wages and hours rule characterization correct. You can allow the employee just to enter raw time and let the rules engine get the proper, essentially, labor law treatment for their hours, implemented automatically for them. So that was all a discussion about user interface advance. And I mean, I think the real takeaway of that is that EBS has a very modern and compelling user experience at this point, some very innovative things like with the command centers in particular. And I encourage you to just get more out of the investment you've already made in eBusiness Suite by deploying that. None of that costs anything, and you should doesn't involve licensing products. You just need to deploy it and enjoy the better user experience. So in terms of functional innovation, I want to start with talking about where we get our ideas for functional features to add. And the number one place we get them is for customer voted enhancements. So we have voting in what we call the communities on My Oracle Support. And so this is a social networking type of enhancement prioritization process. So customers can create new ideas and they can discuss ideas, discuss other people's ideas, and vote for enhancement ideas. And we have this really across all the different applications in eBusiness Suite. So what have we done with this? What has that led to? We've had tens of thousands of this point of users engaged and thousands of ideas that have been generated on this platform. And what's very interesting is it's actually quite effective at helping us narrow down to a set of things that a large number of customers really care about. So if you look at the results of the voting, there's only 3% of the ideas that actually have more than 20 customers voting for them. About another 5% that have 10 to 19 customers voting for them. So if you look at those buckets, we've actually done, I think, a pretty good job of delivering the things that have gotten high votes. Overall, we've delivered over 500 of these different enhancements, but we've delivered 35% of the ideas that got more than 20 votes. And we plan to do more in the future. That's just what we've done already. So this is just to show you that this is working. I mean, it's a good way for you to record what you wish we would add in eBusiness Suite. It's a fair way for us to try to give priorities to what different customers are asking for by seeing kind of where there's a consensus, and for us to execute on this. So if you look at what we've delivered, if you look on the right side column there in the release, there's at least, I mean, there's not just two, but these are examples of, in each release, they're examples of things that got dozens of votes that we added in each release across the different areas. And just to give you a sense of what this kind of enhancements are, they're kind of simple operational things often that make a lot of sense and that that we totally agree ought to be in the product, and a lot of customers have asked for. The things like automatically grouping multiple requisitions into a PO. So if 20 people in the organization requisition a laptop, you want to issue one PO for those 20 laptops to the supplier of laptops. So using your what we call our auto create grouping rules, you can actually accomplish that. In enterprise asset management, people want to use all the normal calendaring functionality that you would expect in a calendaring system to schedule preventive maintenance. Things like, I want to maintain this equipment on the first Wednesday of each month, or every other week on a particular day, every other Monday or something like that. So all those kinds of capabilities now are in the calendaring system for preventive maintenance. So those are just some examples, but it just shows you that the process of getting these kind of practical, efficiency-oriented things done, any business suite, I think, is working, and I encourage you to participate in it. Now, we've done some other things that are more kind of end-to-end thematic and designed to accommodate those sort of higher level things we see customers needing in a larger scope. So, for example, in the order management area, across the whole arc of the 12.2 release set, going from the original release of 12.2 all the way up to the current, the latest release, we've been adding capability systematically for improving the ordering and billing for combinations of products and subscriptions and services as more and more companies move to a recurring revenue model. So we added support for subscription ordering, basically being able to take an order for a product and associated set of warranties or service plans or replenishment services. And then as farther on in the release, different types of billing. So recurring billing, sort of open-ended recurring billing, or milestone billing, where you have sort of a down payment bill, an installation bill, and a final acceptance bill, sort of simple milestones. Usage-based billing, where you're going to base billing on a meter read across for an individual asset or across a group of assets, and then bill based on usage. So we've added support for all of that in the order management system and pricing over the course of 12.2 release. Related to that, in the service contracts area, we've added more advanced billing capabilities there to take kind of consumer billing models, things like rollover minutes that you would have on a mobile phone plan, and make those kind of concepts available if you want to have a service plan. Let's suppose you sell copiers and you want to have a service entitlement where somebody, you offer a certain amount of service where they get service assuming they up to 10,000 copies a month. And then if they go over to the next tier, where the next 5,000 copy, they're in the next tier of 10,000 to 15,000 copies, you either bill them a fixed amount or on a unit basis for the amount of copies they made. And if they're in the next tier, they pay more. It's similar to what you get in energy bills or in mobile phone bills. You can do that if you're doing usage-based billing or usage-based service billing for service contracts. And if they don't use a full allowance in a particular period, you can allow them to roll the unused balance into the subsequent period. Another example of something we kind of did thematically across a wide variety of product areas is in the warehouse and logistics areas is what we call user-defined activities. So the idea here is that we know when we build the product that almost every environment will have operations like pick and put away type operations in a warehouse. What we don't know is you may have other operations in your logistics environment that take a lot of time or are very complicated, and you may want to allocate resources to those activities, measure individual people's productivity at those activities, track how much time is being spent on those activities, a whole variety of things about breaking up your warehouse activities into some custom activities. So breaking down a pallet or unloading a whole truck full of tires and sorting them or something like that might be something that is really important in your business to manage for productivity, but that we don't know when we build the product. So we now allow you to create user-defined activities which then can be captured by users. The time spent on those activities can be captured by users on that mobile app. They can say, I'm beginning this, unloading this truck, and I've ended unloading this truck. So you basically could do time capture on the mobile app. And then on our command center, we can see and help you identify as the manager how much time each worker is spending on that activity, whether some workers are more productive than others, whether you have a staffing shortage, to whether that activities become a bottleneck, all those kinds of things. So really a case of adding a capability and then manifesting it across both the mobile and the enterprise command centers, as well as core functionality within eBusiness Suite itself. Outsourced manufacturing is another area we've made some important business process support advances, in particular our outsourced manufacturing support. We've had that for discrete for a long time. Now we have it for process industries as well. And within process, that genealogy for multi-lot batches, which if in a world, of course, we're very concerned with pharmaceutical manufacturing, particularly, you can definitely appreciate this point where you want to have a certain set of ingredients that are you want to know which batch of an ingredient went into which lot, or which lot of an ingredient went into which lots of finished goods, pills or vaccines or whatever it is you're making. If some lot of ingredients went into various lots of the end product, that way you know, if you have a recall problem or you have a quality problem, you can trace it back to say, okay, what were the things that went into that particular lot that we made. So that's an important thing for a lot of our customers in those industries, food and beverage, as well as pharmaceuticals. Another big functional area of investment we're doing, this doesn't apply to obviously a large number of people, but just to be aware of the kind of investment we're making and the kind of customers that are depending on eBusiness Suite for this type of investment. The US federal government has implemented a program called G-invoicing, or regulation, really in the Treasury Department, called G-invoicing, which is a way to centrally store the terms and conditions for agreements that agencies make to do work for each other. So you have a servicing agency that's going to do some work for a requesting agency. So the Defense Department is going to sell security services to the State Department, or something like that. So the way that contract is structured and how the performance on that is progressing, and how therefore the budgets and the essentially the billing for that is handled, is all being standardized across all the government agencies. So we're building a solution for that in our projects, and in particular in the projects area. It also impacts procurement, and rolling that out to over 70 federal agencies in the US government that rely on eBusiness Suite for their financials and their project management. So you can imagine the investment that makes across, that the US federal government is making across all that set of entities to adopt this solution. And we're working very closely with them to make sure that we handle all the cases that are coming up and all the subtleties that come up as part of these regulations. But just again, gives you an idea of the type of investment we're making in the class of activity that we're supporting in eBusiness Suite. There's some fallout from a lot of these things. So even though you may not be a federal customer, some of the concepts that we have come up with as part of these government contracting development work that we've done applies to a broad set of customers. So we have things like billing groups. So the ability to aggregate invoices or invoices across multiple projects onto a single invoice. That's one kind of concept that came out of this that we support now. Another one is the ability to break down work that you're doing on a project and submit invoices for different types of work to different groups within the customer organization. So you may, if you're an engineering construction company, you may bill one group for design services. You may bill another group for progress payments on the overall project, and you may have another department that would essentially set up to reimburse you for major material purchases, like say you're buying structural steel and there's some way that you pass through the cost of the structural steel when you build it. it's not a progress payment and it's not an engineering service. You may actually have three different ways that you need to bill a customer if you're doing a large construction project. And now we support that kind of granularity for project billing. So those are just some of the things that we've done thematically to support different types of business processes that are evolving that our customers have. And I think you get a sense of that we do that, quite a bit of investment in those areas, as well as the investment we make directly on customer-driven enhancements. The third area I want to talk about just very briefly is sort of table stakes. Everybody expects us to do this, but we do invest quite a bit in this. This is regulatory requirements. Now, regulatory requirements are things we do in a way that supports both 12.1 and 12.2, because as part of support, we want to keep support the ability of you as a customer to meet your regulatory requirements. So one of these, we continue to enhance the treatment that we have of putting leases, IFRS 16 support, we treat putting leases onto particularly your equipment leases, where you're leasing equipment from somebody, onto your balance sheet. And so that's what we call lessee accounting, particularly for equipment. We came out with a basic ability to support that a couple of years ago, but we've continued to work through the sort of corner cases of that support and continue to enhance the solution. Things like being able to have the amortization go through the last option period that you have on a lease, or if you cancel an option, you're doing the accounting based on the cancellation of the option. If you don't intend to renew an option, exercise an option after all. If you need to enter a future dated termination or basically deal with the kind of future dating, post dating situations that come up if you're entering something after it's already started, or if you're going to enter a termination that's going to occur in the future. So those are all things we've added to just sort of round out and make the situation more robust in that accounting support. Another thing I would point out that's applicable to a lot of people that we've done in the regulatory area is for data privacy. So a couple of years ago, we introduced the person data removal tool, which is really the only safe way to forget someone, if you will, with any business suite, a customer, supplier, an employee, an applicant, who based on data privacy rules should be removed from the system. So you can't just delete people, delete rows in the data model. So what we do is we irreversibly overwrite that information in the system with the person data removal tool. Then people have asked us to provide APIs for that so that they can write their own scripted processes, their own sort of master program, rather than just relying on the interface we provide for identifying which people to remove. And we've now done that. So we provided API support for the person data removal tool. Okay, so let's shift gears to what we do to make the system more highly available and easier to operate. And so within this, there's really three things around the technology side of eBusiness Suite I want to focus on. First, just to remind you, the 12.2 release, the original signature feature of the 12.2 release is online patching. This is all about high availability and reduced patching downtime for planned maintenance windows. So for those of you who are still on 12.1, this is still the future, and it's one of the big benefits of getting to 12.2. So the idea is that users remain online while patches are being applied, and the downtime is essentially a bounce of the system to bring it back up on the patched version. And that works no matter how long the patch itself takes to apply, because users are using the unpatched version until you do this bounce. So that's high availability, even if that hasn't been something that drove you to upgrade to 12.2 over the years since that's been out, because your business may not be as sensitive to outage windows. Essentially, everybody benefits from reduced downtimes in the system. So there is a benefit there, whatever that means in your business. Now, the next thing to understand about technology and what we're doing to make the system more maintainable is that we've separated the application functional update, which is those 12.2x updates that we talked about at the beginning from technology modernization. So classically, the way that you advanced eBusiness Suite, what we've had for 30 years in eBusiness Suite, was you had a version, let's say the 11.5.10 version, which was based on a certain version of the underlying middleware. And then when you upgraded, when you did what we called a major upgrade, that involved changing to go to a version of the applications that was built with a later version of the middleware. So we came out with like EBS 12.1 that was built on a later application server version. And that involved delivering you a new level of application code and what we call a database driver that basically moves your data into the new model that's associated with that later application code, and then builds everything with the later middleware. So you have three things to adopt. You have to react to that data model set of changes. Maybe that impacts your custom reports and custom interfaces. Integrations and everything. You had to react to the new level of application code, and then you have to react to the fact that you have new underlying technology, and you have to do that all at once. That's a classic EBS major upgrade. And then once you got to that level, you could apply a patch set update, essentially go from 12.1.1 up to 12.